had one of those slightly embarrassing moments the other day. I was at a cafe just trying to order something simple, nothing fancy, and halfway through the sentence I just paused. Not because I didn't know the words, it was more like I suddenly became aware of myself speaking, and then everything felt a bit off.
That sort of moment where it all feels normal and then suddenly it doesn't.
Yeah, exactly. And the odd part was, I could have finished the sentence, it was right there, but instead I just sort of smiled, nodded, and didn't say anything else. It must have looked so awkward.
You froze, didn't you? It's like your brain just switches off for a second. Everything's still there, just not coming out.
That's exactly how it felt. And the funny thing is, right after that, I replayed it in my head and thought, that was so easy, why didn't I just say it? It wasn't even a complicated sentence.
It's almost worse when it's simple, isn't it? Because you know you're capable of saying it, which makes the silence feel a bit louder than it should be.
Exactly. And then you start wondering if the other person noticed it too. Like, did they think I didn't understand or that my English wasn't good enough? It just spirals a bit. Actually, does that ever happen to you, or is it just me overthinking it?
No, that happens more often than people like to admit. Most just don't talk about it. They carry on as if nothing happened.
That's slightly reassuring, I suppose. Makes me feel a bit less odd. Anyway, if you've just come across us, this is Mind the Gap. We tend to end up talking about these little moments that don't seem like much, but somehow stick with you.
And that one, what you just described, I think a lot of people will recognize it straight away.
The more I think about it, the more it doesn't make sense. Because it's not like I didn't know the sentence. I can still say it now perfectly fine. It's just, in that moment, something felt off. Like I suddenly didn't trust myself to say it properly.
That's interesting, because what you're describing doesn't sound like a lack of English, it sounds more like hesitation, like something stepped in just before you spoke.
Yeah, and it's not even a long pause. It's really quick. 1 second I'm about to say it, and then I just don't. I kind of pull back without even thinking.
Almost like you stopped yourself before anything could go wrong.
That actually sounds quite accurate. It's like I was trying to avoid something, but I don't even know what exactly.
And yet this sentence was there, wasn't it? You weren't searching for words.
No, not at all. It was literally on the tip of my tongue. I could almost hear myself saying it. I just didn't let it happen.
That's the bit people often miss, I think. They assume, oh, I couldn't say it, so I must not know it. But in cases like this, you do know it. You just didn't say it.
That's slightly uncomfortable to hear, though, because it means I can't just blame my English anymore.
Well, it does shift things a bit. If you know what to say, then the question becomes, what stopped you?
And that's the part I've been stuck on, because I can't point to anything obvious. No one interrupted me, nothing went wrong. I just didn't say it.
Which, in a way, makes it even more interesting, because it suggests the problem isn't outside, it's something happening internally, just for a split second.
A split second that somehow decides everything.
There's something else I haven't really said yet, and it sounds a bit silly when I put it into words, but in that moment, I think I was worried about how I sounded, not just whether the sentence was correct, but how it would come across. I didn't want to sound off.
Not silly at all, that's actually quite common. It's less about the words themselves and more about how you feel you're being perceived.
Yeah, I think that's it. There's this moment where you suddenly become very aware of yourself, like how you sound, how you might be coming across, and then everything tightens up a bit.
That's usually when people become self-conscious, not in a dramatic way, just quietly aware of themselves in a way they weren't a second ago.
It does feel quite sudden, and once that feeling kicks in, it's hard to ignore. Even if I try to just carry on, there's this voice in the background going, that didn't sound right, or you could say that better.
That sounds like overthinking more than anything else. Not thinking about what to say, but thinking about how it's going to be judged.
Exactly, and it's exhausting actually, because you're trying to speak, but at the same time you're also monitoring yourself. It's like doing two things at once.
That's a good way to put it. And the brain doesn't always handle that well, especially in real time. So it does something quite practical. It slows you down, or in your case, stops you altogether.
So you're saying it's not random, it actually has a reason?
I'd say so. If you look at it from that angle, your brain is treating the situation like it's a bit risky. Not physically, of course, but socially. There's a chance you might feel embarrassed, so it steps in.
That's quite interesting, because it didn't feel like protection at the time, it just felt frustrating.
That's usually how it works. It's trying to protect you from something like embarrassment or saying the wrong thing, but the result is that you don't say anything at all.
And then afterwards, you feel even worse because now you're replaying it in your head.
Exactly, and that's where it becomes a bit of a loop. You hesitate, you stop, then you think about it, and next time you're even more cautious.
That makes a lot of sense, and I guess that's why it feels like it keeps happening.
There's another thing worth mentioning though. Most people assume others are paying close attention, judging every word. In reality, people are far too busy thinking about themselves.
That's probably true. Everyone's just trying to get through the conversation without embarrassing themselves.
Exactly. So the pressure you feel, a lot of it is coming from you, not from them.
Something just occurred to me while you were saying that. It's not only that I stop speaking sometimes, even when I do speak, I don't sound like me. It's a bit hard to explain, but I feel quieter in English, like I'm holding something back, even when I'm actually talking.
That's interesting, because what you're describing goes beyond language. It's not just about what you're saying, it's about how you show up when you say it.
Right, and I don't have that feeling in Chinese at all. I can joke around, interrupt people, say things without thinking too much. But in English, everything feels more controlled, more careful.
Almost like you're editing yourself in real time.
Exactly. But it's not just editing the sentence, it's like I'm editing myself as a person. That sounds a bit dramatic, but it kind of feels that way.
It doesn't sound dramatic at all. You're not just translating your thoughts into another language, you're adjusting who you are while doing it.
That explains a lot, actually, because sometimes I finish a sentence in English and think, that doesn't sound like something I would say, even if it's technically correct.
That's a very common feeling. People often say, I don't sound like myself, or that doesn't feel like me. It's not about correctness at that point, it's about identity.
Which is quite unsettling if you think about it, because when you're speaking your first language, you don't question that, you just are.
Exactly. There's no gap between you and your language, it's immediate. But with a second language, there's often a slight distance, and you can feel it.
And I suppose that distance makes you more cautious, because it doesn't feel fully natural yet.
That's right. And when something doesn't feel fully natural, you tend to monitor it more, which brings us back to what you said earlier. You start watching yourself.
So it's not just that I'm overthinking my English, I'm also overthinking how I come across as a person.
That's a good way to put it. And because that version of you in English still feels a bit unfamiliar, you don't fully trust it yet.
That makes sense. It's like meeting a slightly different version of yourself and not quite knowing if you like it.
Or whether other people will like it.
Yeah, I think that's the part that makes me hesitate. It's not just the language, it's what version of me is coming out when I speak.
And until that version starts to feel more natural, that hesitation tends to stay. Not because you can't speak, but because you're still getting used to being that person in that language.
I keep going back to what we were saying earlier, and it's starting to feel like the speaking part isn't really the issue. I mean, I can speak, I do speak. It's just something shifts in the moment. So it's not really about speaking, is it?
If you look at everything you've described, it doesn't really point to a lack of ability. It points to something a bit more subtle. Maybe it's not your English, it's your relationship with it.
Relationship? That's an interesting way to put it. What do you mean by that?
I mean the way you approach it, the expectations you put on yourself when you use it. For instance, that moment you described, it sounds like you didn't just want to say something, you wanted to say it well.
That's true. I don't think I would have hesitated if I didn't care how it sounded.
And that's where it starts to get tricky, because once there's that expectation, there's also a risk. The risk of getting it wrong, or not sounding quite right.
And I suppose that's what I was trying to avoid. Not making a mistake, not sounding awkward.
Which is understandable, but it can also become a bit of a trap, because if the goal is to avoid mistakes completely, then not speaking at all becomes the safest option.
That sounds a bit extreme, but I can see it happening. It's like my brain goes, let's just not risk it.
Exactly. And the odd thing is, that kind of thinking often comes from wanting to do well. It's not a lack of effort, it's actually the opposite.
So it's not that I don't try enough. It might be that I'm trying too hard to get it right.
That's a good way of putting it. When you're constantly aiming for something to be perfect, even small uncertainty can feel like a reason to stop.
Whereas if I didn't think about it that much, I might just say it anyway.
That's often what you see with native speakers. They mess things up all the time. They get things slightly wrong or say something a bit off, but they keep going.
That's true. I've noticed that.
they don't seem too bothered when something isn't perfect.
Because their focus isn't on getting everything exactly right, it's on keeping the conversation going, and that changes how they react to mistakes.
Whereas I'm doing the opposite. I stop the conversation to avoid the mistake.
Which, ironically, creates a bigger problem than the mistake itself.
That's quite frustrating to realize. It means the issue isn't something external I can just fix. It's more about how I see the whole thing.
It does shift the focus, though, from I need better English to something more like, how do I deal with not getting it perfect every time?
Alright, so if I take all of that in, what am I supposed to do with it? Just say it anyway and risk sounding a bit stupid.
I wouldn't rush to turn it into a rule, but maybe just be a bit less afraid of that possibility. Not completely fearless, just slightly less concerned.
That sounds reasonable when you say it like that. Although I can already imagine myself hesitating again next time.
You probably will. It's not something that disappears overnight. But the difference might be what you do after that moment of hesitation, whether you stop or carry on anyway.
So instead of trying to avoid that pause, I just move through it.
Something like that. And if it doesn't come out quite right, you can always adjust. People do that all the time without thinking much about it.
I suppose I don't give myself that option very often. It's either say it perfectly or not say it at all.
That's quite a strict standard to hold yourself to, especially in conversation where things are naturally a bit messy.
Now that you mention it, even in my first language, I don't always say things perfectly. I just don't notice it the same way.
That's the difference. You allow yourself to adjust naturally. You might say something, pause, rephrase it, and it doesn't feel like a problem.
Whereas in English, I treat every sentence like it's final, like there's no chance to fix it once it's out.
Which isn't really how conversations work. You can always say, let me try again, or that came out wrong, or even just pause and go, what I mean is, and carry on.
That actually feels quite freeing when you put it that way, like I don't have to get it right immediately.
Exactly. You're allowed to arrive at what you want to say gradually. It doesn't all have to come out perfectly formed in one go.
I think I've been making it a bigger deal than it is, turning every sentence into something that needs to be right the first time.
Most people do.
That's oddly comforting. Alright, I think we'll leave it there for today. If any of this felt familiar, you're definitely not the only one.
And if you did enjoy this, feel free to follow the show or share it with someone who might find it helpful.
We'll be back again next week.
See you next time.